Hello and welcome to this Online College of Coding video tutorial series. This is the 6th video in our series of intermediate breaky blocks in Unity. In this video we're going to be adding a game manager and a menu to our game. Before watching this video, it's recommended you've seen the previous videos in the series, as well as the intro to Unity videos and intermediate programming concept videos. Let's get started. Adding a menu to our game means we need another state in the game. The game can either be in the game state, which is playing, or in the menu state, which is the menu. For this, we need a variable that will keep track of which state we're currently in. This variable is going to need to get added to a script, and that script needs to be attached to an object. So in the hierarchy, right-click and choose Create Empty. Select the new game object and rename it in the inspector to Game Manager. Also using the inspector, click the Add Component button and then choose New Script. Name the script also Game Manager and make sure the language is set to C#. Then press Create and Add. Relocate the script to the scripts folder, just like for all the rest of our scripts, and then open it up in MonoDevelop, ready to add some code. The Game Manager script now has a Boolean variable that keeps track of the current state, and a link to the paddle prefab so the paddle can be spawned once we enter the game state and destroyed once we leave it and go back to the menu. To keep track of the paddle once we've created it, we're storing that in an instance variable, the paddle instance. So when we play our game, we start in the menu state. While we're in the menu state, the script is constantly checking for either a left click or a spacebar press to switch into the game state. This introduces the setup game function, which we use to create the paddle and put it into our paddle instance variable. Then we set the in-game variable to be true. Now that our paddle is being instantiated through our game manager script, we don't need it to exist in the hierarchy. So select the paddle in the hierarchy, then drag it into the prefabs folder in the project browser, and press the delete button on your keyboard to remove the paddle from the hierarchy. Select the game manager in the hierarchy, and then in the project browser, find the paddle prefab in the prefabs folder and drag it into the paddle prefab slot of the game manager script. Although our game isn't perfect, we can now go from the menu state into the in-game state, but the bricks still exist both in the menu and the game, so that needs to be fixed up. The next step is to get the game to transition to the menu state again once the game's ended. In the Breaky Blocks game, the player loses when there's no more balls left in the scene. Therefore, we need a way to keep track of the number of balls in our game and find out if there's ever zero. To keep track of the balls, you guessed it, we're going to use a script. So open up the ball script in MonoDevelop and add the following code. Within the script, we're going to create a list to keep tabs on the balls. The start function gets the balls to add themselves to the list using the this keyword. Then we create an onDestroy function, and the same keyword is used for them to remove themselves from the list as they are removed from the scene. This is a keyword that tells the script to use itself as a value. In the ball script, this returns the ball script attached to the current ball object. Now switch to the game manager script and add this code. Now that we have our list of balls, we can use it to test if the game should end. The endGame function is the opposite of the startGame function. We use it to destroy the paddle and reset the in-game variable to false, thus transitioning the code flow in the update and moving the game to the menu state once again. But this only works in theory, because we haven't added a way for our balls to be destroyed yet. To complete the transition between the different game states, we need to completely reset the components, including the brick manager. The brick manager needs to be created at the start and destroyed at the end of the in-game state. For this, just like the paddle, we need to create two variables to manage the manager. One to hold the reference to a prefab, and the other to hold the instance. Just like we did with the paddle, we create an instance of the public variable and store it within the private variable in the setupGame function. At the end of the in-game state, in the endGame function, we destroy the brick manager so it no longer exists in the menu state. You might be wondering about the brick manager prefab because it doesn't exist yet. Well, save your script and return to Unity because we're about to create it. Find the brick manager in the hierarchy and drag it into the prefabs folder in the project browser then delete it from the hierarchy. We can select the game manager and drag the brick manager prefab into the game manager script component in the inspector. Now, you can run your game and the bricks won't be there in the menu state. You can enter the game state and they'll also be deleted once you lose the game. Only we haven't fully added that functionality to our game yet. The way in which our balls are destroyed is by colliding with the bottom of the play area. We need to add a floor with the trigger collider component. So select the roof in the hierarchy, then right click it and choose duplicate. Using the inspector, name the duplicate floor and set floor's position to be -5 on the y-axis and leave the x and z axes at 0. In the inspector, find the box collider 2D component and tick its is trigger box. Click the add component button and go down to physics 2D, then choose a rigid body 2D component. Why are we adding a rigid body? Because it's good practice. Set the body type to kinematic within the rigid body component, and again, click the add component button, and this time scroll down to new script. Set the name of the new script to be floor, and click the create and add button. Then, in the project browser, relocate the script into the scripts folder and open it up in MonoDevelop. All we need to do this time is remove some code. The reason we left the floor class empty is because we don't need the class to do anything. We're just using it as a name tag of sorts that we can search for. When the ball collides with the trigger volume in the game, we can check to see if that object had a floor script attached. Then use that to run the necessary code. That's kind of cool. So open the ball script in MonoDevelop and add this code. In the onTriggerEnter function, we're determining whether or not the balls collided with the floor using the same method as when we detect if it collided with the paddle. Then we'll destroy the ball. If you save your script and return to Unity, you can test your game and go from the menu state to the in-game state and then back to the menu state and do the full loop. Awesome. Now back to our state transitioning. We have the mechanics working well, but our menu state is still empty. There's a title we need to add to it that'll disappear when we play the game. That means we're going to need to be able to turn it on and off, but not necessarily reset it. It makes the most sense that the game manager script should control this because it controls the rest of the state switching. So open the game manager script and let's add some more code. We're going to use the title game object variable to hold a link to the title object and switch it on and off. As the perfect opposite of all the other objects, we set the title's visibility to true in the endGame function and false in the setUpGame function. Where do we get this title from though? Well, I've got an asset package for you. Import the title asset package into your project, and from the prefabs folder, drag the title prefab into the hierarchy. Select the game manager in the hierarchy, and drag the prefab from the hierarchy as well into the variable of the game manager script, and there you go. Run your game and check it out. Our game is now mostly complete, but could do with a bit of polishing off. In the next part of the tutorial, we'll add some visual and sound effects and maybe tidy up any algorithms in our game that aren't quite perfect. See you then.